To say that the previous Elder Scrolls games had a much more in-depth magicka system would be an understatement. Skyrim lacked several spells, enchantments, and abilities from the previous games, and even an entire school of magicka. But yet another thing that we lost in Skyrim was spellcrafting. Today we're taking a look at one of the newest Skyrim paid creations, which not only adds its own take on a spell crafting system, but includes a handful of new spell types as well. Spelltome Craft by PrincessMely is available for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation for 500 credits, which for the sake of convenience we'll say is approximately around $5 USD. Adding a total of 5 Spelltome crafting altars to the Hall of Elements inside the College of Winterhold. Each of the 5 altars represents one of the 5 schools of magic: conjuration, alteration, destruction, illusion, and last but not least, restoration.
Restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
The altars include crafting options for both the vanilla spells as well as a handful of new spells included with the creation, some of which are returning spells from previous games. Like any of the paid creations out there, this doesn't require any mods in order to play, and it should be compatible with just about any other mods out there, except for ones that might change the layout of the Hall of the Elements. In order to craft any of these spells, you'll need a couple things. Namely, you'll need blank spell tomes for the corresponding school, a few of which are available to grab at the altars the first time you visit them. But more can be purchased from the new merchant Eloise, who can be found in the college's library. In addition to needing the blank tomes, each spell will have different crafting materials needed, from gold to bread to glow dust and just about everything in between. At each of these altars, one of the needed items to craft a tome will be available, giving you an easier way to try out the crafting system immediately. For the Illusion School of Magic, you can craft Clairvoyance right off the bat, requiring just 1 glow dust and a blank illusion tome. One of the new illusion spells is Grasp of Terror, a higher level version of Fear, in which enemies up to level 50 will flee for 60 seconds, and requires a blank tome, a cave bear pelt, 2 ectoplasm, bear claws, 2 flawless rubies, and 4 honey. It's very bear oriented. Similarly, we get a new high-level version of Courage named Heroism, in which the affected target won't flee for 2 minutes, gaining extra health and stamina as well. One of the new illusion spells that I really like is called Seductive Gaze, in which casting the spell grants better trade prices for the next 30 seconds. And it can be crafted with a blank tome, a gold diamond necklace, 5 vampire dust, and a flawless diamond. This altar also comes with higher level versions of Calm and Fury, as well as a couple new versions of Invisibility, each with their own secondary effects, 2 of which grant Muffle and the 3rd, healing the user. The Conjuration altar allows for us to craft Conjure Familiar right out the gate, and it adds a handful of new conjurable creatures, including mud crabs, giant mud crabs, skeevers, rabbits, netches, bears, and even the jumping spiders from Solstheim. The crafting materials for each of these spells is fitting, requiring the alchemical and crafting ingredients that drop from each of the creatures, or materials that might be associated with them. For example, Conjure Rabbit requires carrots and a cabbage. That way you don't have to go around killing bunnies. I mean, you still can. Who am I to judge? Many of the summon creature tomes will also require a soul gem of varying quality. So a bear will require a grand soul gem, while a skeever only needs a petty gem. Similar to illusion crafting, the Destruction altar focuses on adding in some higher level variants of the base game spells, such as Fire Blast, dealing 80 points of damage in a fiery explosion, which can be crafted with 3 flawless rubies and 8 fire salts. This is a new master level spell, so it's very much intended for more magic oriented characters. All 3 destruction types get a new type of spell that serves as a low grade version of the cloak spells, lasting for only a few seconds and dealing damage to enemies within 10 feet, while also dealing a small amount of damage to the caster, just as a bit of a trade-off. Alteration doesn't have a ton of new spells, but it does include a few from previous games that I was really happy to see. Alchemistry acts as a spell to buff the strength of your crafted potions by 25% for the next minute, and it can be crafted with Dwarven Oil, Crimson, and regular Nirnroot. Feather, which increases carrying capacity by 120 for the next 2 minutes. Magicka Shield, a castable 50% resistance to magic. And one of my favorites, Water Walking, which, well, you can probably figure that one out for yourself. Water walking requires dwarven oil, dwarven boots, and a flawless diamond. We already have water walking as a potion in game, but I missed having a castable version. And finally, Restoration, giving you the much needed spells for Cure Disease and Cure Poison, which I always felt were missing from the game, as well as some other useful buffs, such as Fortify Health, Fortify Magicka, Fortify Stamina, and Fortify Speed, with this one in particular requiring Skooma in order to craft. One thing to take away from Restoration especially is that this gives us spells that are already available as potions, but it allows for more Magicka-focused users to cast these effects instead, just as we would have been able to in the previous games. As someone who's been fairly mixed on a lot of paid offerings for Skyrim's Creations, this is one that I think has a pretty reasonable price point, but I would still love to see if it could be updated over time. I think it provides a great opportunity to introduce some old spells from the previous games into Skyrim, and it can give you a more straightforward way to obtain some of the spell tomes that might be a bit more rare. It means having the option between crafting them yourself or hoping that the different court mages and merchants will have the tome that you're looking for. However, the original base game master level spells that you obtain through the quest for the college are not available for crafting. I personally think that's the right move, since having them craftable would take away from having to reach level 100 in each of those schools in order to be able to learn them in the first place. But at the same time, adding new master level spells gives players plenty of reason to engage with this new crafting system. One thing that I think could have been interesting is if these new spells could be found at merchants as well, or if they could be found in the world, maybe randomly in treasure chests, just for a bit more integration within the world. I like the design of the altars themselves, and I really like that they light up as you approach them, which seems to work the best if you approach them directly head on. The spells added by the creation provided a good mix, giving us some base level versions of the more powerful spells so that we can try them out earlier on in a playthrough, as well as more powerful versions of mid-game spells, which I think was really needed for stuff like Fear and Frenzy. Bringing back Water Walking, Fortify Health and Magicka, Cure Disease, and Cure Poison really brings me back to some of the spells that we missed out on when Skyrim first came out. If the author is adding more spells in the future via updates, I'd love to maybe see a lockpicking spell, like we had back in Morrowind and Oblivion, or Slowfall from Morrowind, which I realize might not be as much of a necessity when you have a shout like Become Ethereal, but it's something that I personally miss. The creation will not display spells added by other mods, or even from the official Creation Club packs, as these would all have to be added manually by the author. But given that this is part of Bethesda's Creations program, I think it would be really nice to see the spells added by Creation Club to be included in the crafting, maybe via an update in the future. The spells that you get from the Arcane Accessories Creation Club pack are really good, but I never really liked that you could just find all of them at once in a single chest in Hobbs Fall Cave. I think having the alternative to craft them instead would make obtaining these spells feel a bit more rewarding and engaging for the player. One key difference between this creation and spellcrafting in the previous games is that you're not able to change the power of the spells. Much like the vanilla spell tomes, they have set numbers for damage dealt, healing, and so on. Ultimately, it does feel a bit more in line with the rest of the game's design, but it also means that you lose out on getting to really customize your spells at the same time. But having this limitation also means that you're not going to wind up with 8 versions of the same spell in your magic menu as you try to create your ideal version of it. One minor thing for me is that I would have maybe liked to see only one crafting station, with each of the 5 schools of magic having their own crafting tab. I'll put a quick proof of concept on screen as an example. While I like that each altar has its own lighting effect representing the associated school, I think having only one altar would ultimately make a little bit more sense. But similarly, I would have maybe liked it if we only needed a generic blank tome, rather than blank tomes for each specific school, since we already need other crafting materials for those individual spells. I'm still really happy with the creation as a whole, but if you've been watching me for any period of time, you know that I have weirdly high expectations, and I always have something or other that I think can be improved upon. So really, all these critiques and ideas are just suggestions that I think could help to make it feel a bit more integrated into the rest of the game. And one final thing that the author might want to consider for future updates is a rebalance for some of the spells. I love that they wanted to add new master level spells, but having Cure Disease as a master spell feels like a bit much. I can understand not wanting to have this spell completely replace Cure Disease potions, but I think making it an adept spell would make a bit more sense. The same goes for Fortify Health, Magicka, and Stamina, which are all master spells as well. And given the Magicka cost to cast them, it doesn't feel like they're particularly worth it right now. These are all things that can be addressed in updates and patches. As it is, we've seen several verified creators go back to make patches balancing updates, or even in the case of Echoes of the Veil, add new content as well. There's a couple mods out there that aim to add their own versions of spellcrafting. To me, the most notable one is Spellforge, which is pretty lightweight as it doesn't have any mod requirements in order to use. Skyblivion is also working on its own spell crafting system, in which they'll try to create something similar to Oblivion's, with the ability to change a spell's magnitude, duration, area of effect, and so on. I know Skyblivion's team already released a standalone version of their new lockpicking minigame, so I wonder if they'd ever consider releasing a standalone version of their spell crafting system for Skyrim. But that's gonna be all for today. As always, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the Patreon or the YouTube memberships, both of which get access to the Discord server. YouTube members also get access to the channel emotes, which can be used in the comments below. And make sure to check out the streams at twitch.tv/0periodproductions. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.